This man was officially declared a dwarf when he was just 18 years old. I'm not pulling your leg here, that is factually correct. This is the only man in history who has been named a dwarf and a giant in their lifetime. And today we are going to dive into this story and measure up the facts to figure out why this is the case, who is this man, and how this could have even happened in the first place. This is Brainspill, my name is Tank, and today we're talking about the man that became a giant from a dwarf, and how he was named both in his lifetime. I would love to give you a simple answer to this question, basically saying that he just ate all his vegetables, but the reality is much more complicated than this. And no, it wasn't because he ate all his vegetables. Sorry kids. The title sounds very strange, and you're probably wondering how this is even possible. Well, let me introduce you to a man called Adam Rayner, the subject of today's video. Adam Rayner has an extraordinary physical transformation. Born in 1899 in Austria, Adam Rayner's story shines a light on the mysteries of the human body and the incredible capacity of human biology which confounds our understanding to this day. Over the course of his life, Rayner experienced unprecedented changes in his stature, making him a subject of both scientific fascination and human curiosity. Adam Rayner was born into a rather unremarkable family in Graz, Austria in 1899. During his early years, there was nothing extraordinary about this physical development. He grew at a rate consistent with his peers and reached a rather modest height. When he was very young, he was often described as being very small, thin and weak. I do wonder whether that was just in comparison to what he would grow to be later in his life, or whether he was actually just short for his age. Either way, this man saved all of his points in growth until later down the line. So, you'll see how big of a transformation this is very shortly because it is mind-boggling. However, by the time he became a teenager, it became evident that something wasn't quite right, that his body was making strange changes that were rather unpredictable. And no, I'm not talking about the strange changes we all have when we're teenagers. This was something else. This was rather unique. I'm talking full-blown growth spurts, as in unnaturally big. I'm presuming that he was the envy of all of his peers because this growth spurt was insane. Ladies, line up one at a time please. In 1917, at the age of 18, he was measured at 122 centimetres, or just over 4 foot in stature. He was therefore refused entry into the Austro-Hungarian army to take part in the First World War. A typical defining characteristic of dwarfism is an adult who is below the height of 4 foot 10 inches. So, even at 18, he was just too small. He probably dodged a bullet there, in more ways than one. This, however, would not last for long. A few years later, Adam Rayner began to experience a rapid and unprecedented growth spurt. His height seemed to accelerate at an alarming rate, and he soon surpassed 6 feet, which was considered taller than the average man at his time. This sudden surge in height also came with a number of serious health problems, including severe vision issues and chronic joint pain. I don't think anybody is expected to grow that quickly, let alone your own body not realising what's happening, and you're probably just not prepared for it, and the body's thinking, what the hell's going on here? Hence, the joint pain. Between his early 20s to early 30s, he gained height at an average rate of 9.14 centimetres, or 3.16 inches per year, but by the year 1932, at the age of 33, Rayner had reached a height of 7 foot 2 inches. At the age of 19, he went from a US shoe size 10 to a size 20 in only 3 years. Puzzled by his condition, Rayner sought the medical attention of 2 doctors who examined him in detail during August of 1930 and May 1931, at which time his height was 7 foot 1 inches. It was determined that the potential cause of this was a benign pituitary adenoma, a rare disorder caused by an overproduction of a growth hormone, typically due to a tumour on the pituitary gland. Adam Rayner's case was exceptional because not only did he have this condition, he was also considered to have gigantism, a condition characterised by excessive growth during childhood due to an overproduction of the growth hormone. This dual affliction made his physical transformation even more astounding. Rayner's bones continued to grow, leading to his bloody huge size and astonishing height. Whilst being this high sounds pretty cool initially, based on the fact that you can reach everything in the highest point of the top cupboard in your kitchen, it came with a lot of problems. Mainly the fact that being this tall, taller than all of your peers, means that finding clothes that fit you is very hard. You've kind of got to go a little bit skew-whiff to kind of make clothes that fit you, especially if you're that tall. Not only was navigating through things like doorways quite an arduous task, but with the constant pains he was feeling, this was purely not normal, and I think anybody would trade away height in order to not feel pain like that again. And that is kind of what he looked into to see what could be done to try and stop this from happening. Whilst this did make his life incredibly challenging, those that knew him said that he put on a brave face, was still a friendly guy, and tried to make some humour out of the whole situation. Rayner would have an operation to have this tumour removed, which would help him and try and prevent the constant growing, but of course by this point he'd already grown to an excessive height. So whilst the tumour had been growing for more than a decade, medical science had only progressed so far, meaning that only so much could be done. At the time as well, this operation that he had was incredibly risky, but you know that this must have been really difficult for him, because for him to take such a risky procedure must have been worth it if his life was in constant pain. On the 2nd of December 1930, Rayner underwent this dangerous operation. Thankfully, the surgery was performed by the very talented Oscar Hirsch, and this was a successful operation. Rayner would then have regular checkups to make sure that he was okay. He seemed fine, like he wasn't growing much more at this point, but due to the fact that he'd been this tall for so long, the curvature in his spine had taken a bend for the worst, meaning that this was causing even more joint problems than he already had. With ever-increasing pains, he simply couldn't lead a normal life anymore, meaning that for the remainder of his days, he had to live in a care facility to make sure that he had people that could help him day in, day out. It was also believed that the curvature in his spine also led to the vision problems he was facing, because this also deteriorated over the years despite the fact that the tumour had already been removed. Even prior to the removal of the tumour, Rayner had already been rendered too weak and unable to stand on his own due to this gland. This put him in a position where he pretty much needed care for the rest of his life. Shortly after the surgery, Rayner entered a home for the aged, where he stayed for the remainder of his life, and he died on the 4th of March 1950 at the age of 51. He had reached a final height of 7 foot and 8 inches, which works out at about 234 centimetres. Whilst being that tall sounds really cool, with the rest of the problems he faced, in particular his health, it really doesn't seem worth it, and I think anybody would trade away height in order to live a normal life. Adam Rayner's case remains a subject of fascination in the medical community. His dual diagnosis challenged the prevailing notions of these conditions and contributed significantly to our understanding of growth disorders. His extensive medical records and x-rays continue to be studied by genetics to this day, who try and seek rare insights into these disorders. As fascinating as this story is and the problems he faced, he did seem to live a fairly long life, all things considered, and for someone who can beat all expectations, it's pretty impressive nonetheless. If you guys liked that video, here's another one just like it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.